Woo! What's up, good people? Y'all all reached out to me, wanting me to find out what's going on with the Suge Knight thing. Since y'all saw the or heard part two that was released out to the general public, so now the collect call with Suge Knight with Dave Mays, and they've been off and rolling. Think they made it up to episode 2. They ain't been stopped yet. And this time, Suge was taking aim at Dr. Dre, Snoop, a lot of guys. Basically, his entire death row staff. And how he's been wronged. Now, in this whole situation, let's start with Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre essentially was the crown jewel that he was bringing to his label when he decided, because Dre was making the music or producing the records. So when they were at Ruthless to acquire Dr. Dre, he was talking about all the points and and all the things that happened. He never really spoke on the Eazy-E accosting to get Easy to sign. Now, here's the thing about that. Getting Easy to sign was never going to be easy. But they knew better than to put hands on Easy like that. So, the deal that he was talking about on the podcast show was that Dre was only getting like 1 point because he was not just artist, he was a executive producer. He had him signed to an EP contract, which means that he would get a point off the records that was sold. But he's saying, I was paying Dre 2 points for the records that was going on, that they were going to make. He's like, Dre was going to get paid 2 points. So if he did 1 million records, he'd get $2 million. I wanted to get Dre that. But what he was saying, according to Ruthless, if Ruthless takes a loss, then Dre would take a loss. Saying, Dre, I know you're supposed to get that, but we took a loss. So instead of you getting $4 or whatever, he was breaking the numbers down to that, saying that Dr. Dre his points is consistent only if the company is profitable. If the company's not profitable, then he's not going to be paid that point. Which is make more like an kind of a backwards equity deal that doesn't really help the artist. Now, you have two choices to deal with in this situation. And you can either go to court, fight it, or just, do what's on the list and make a deal and negotiate with people you don't like. And dishonest practices you despise. So that's became the natural selection of things. Now, people didn't understand what was going on as far as, all of the different, situations that was transpiring with how the deal was done. Well, after dealing back and forth with lawyers, and they said, look, we can make this thing really expensive. We can go from here to another dilemma. It's not going to help anybody So let's try to, resolve this in a good way where everybody makes money and everybody moves forward. Dr. Dre is never going to record with Ruthless Records again. All right, he's not going to produce another record. You guys know that. So you can either have this guy under contract, have him sitting there. He's never going to work with you guys, or you can just make a deal, get some money, and move forward. So they decided to do that rather than to drag this thing out. They decided to sit down and negotiate. Easy didn't want to do it because he was upset that Dre is the one that helped set him up, saying, yo, I'm going to meet you over there, and then have Suge do that. So he was upset about that. And that it was a setup. And that was the last time Easy was put in a situation like that. Because it was Dre. Dre ain't no street dude. So he wasn't expecting anything like that from Dre. So Jimmy Iovine came in to handle the negotiations with Jerry Heller and Eazy. And what they got was royalty from Dr. Dre's work at Death Row. Eazy E had went ahead and made a song about it, but because they had him as not only artist, as executive producer for a large part of Dre's albums that he comes out with, including The Chronic, they would have to be paid for. Now, a lot of people didn't understand the process in making such a large dilemma between, or a big fuss, because this is an expensive pickup. So what Suge Knight was actually doing was banking everything on Dr. Dre. I mean, really, he was banking everything on Dre. Dre was the only really proven artist there was. Like, that was it. Snoop wasn't proven yet. Nobody knew who Snoop was. So at that time, it was very unique, very ballsy, and very innovative to say, I need this situation resolved or taken care of because Dre's going to be the guy to head this company and we're going to go to the moon. Like, this is a big jump, big risk for sure. So the fact that he even went this route and banked everything on Dr. Dre and making this company, and the fact that they hit it out the park immediately, that's just it's shocking and don't really happen in the music business like that. Like, right out of the gate, like 10 million albums sold. So what Suge said about Dre, about the gun situation, how, like, his business manager, he asked me, it's like, Dre needed some guns. So he said he was going to wire the money and get the guns over from the business manager over to the other partners. So I said, well, let me get the business manager for you. and he got the business manager information. Then he went and gave the business manager information over to you. And then they said, the FBI and the feds came, and then they said, well, the business manager, since you put him in business manager, Dre gonna either go to jail or, somebody gotta go to jail. So I said, you know what? I'd take probation. Because Dre, he'd have went down if it wasn't for that. So I said, I'd take that probation. Now, I don't have any record of that information. So that's something Suge just gonna have to stand for right now. Somebody else can tell you that. That part I don't know. So you heard it like I heard it. That was probably the first time I heard about him getting a probation. So he said Dre owe him money for that. But here's the thing. If Dre owed him money for that, Dre more than paid him back when they made the deal, what they call the verbal agreement. Now, Dre did have a lot of legal issues. Oh, don't get that wrong. Dre had tons of legal issues on his head. Every time you turned your head, Dr. Dre was in another legal issue. Dre had problems. He had a lot of problems, and drinking was the source. I mean, not only his assault on women, he was insulting producers. He got shot fighting a so-called producer over a Jewel, shot in the leg, still had a bullet in his leg. There's a lot of stuff going on with Dre. He broke a man's jaw, and he got probation for that. And then he was gone crazy, drunk, and just speeding and running from the cops. They pulled him over. He was way beyond the limit. So he ended up going to jail. And he had to do like 8 months or whatever. So they was working out some work release plan for him. And Dre was in a bad spot. He had to change immediately, or he wasn't going to keep walking out of these situations without going to jail. Now, that's true. But when Dre left the company, if you felt Dre owed you money, you wouldn't have let Dre leave the company. When you negotiated to let Dr. Dre walk out of death row, he gave up everything to leave death row. So when he left Ruthless, right, Dr. Dre could not, he was executive producer. That's what Ruthless Records had him, signed as. So they had to get a royalty point. So to prevent Dr. Dre from being executive producer, he wasn't an executive producer on the albums. So they had him as artist and executive producer. So they got points from his artistry, but they were getting royalties out of the situation because they were going to be using Dre's services. But Dre was never listed as producer on none of the records. It would say mixed by Dr. Dre. Oh, this was mixed by Dr. Dre. This wasn't produced by Dr. Dre. You see? If you go back and look at those Chronic albums, you'll see that a lot of the songs were mixed by Dr. Dre. And they had executive producer with Suge Knight. This was to ensure that they weren't pouring out millions and millions of equity dollars to Ruthless Records. Now, when you look at this and you go to the exit part of when Dre decided, okay, guess what? I'm ready to leave now. So now you got Dr. Dre, who's ready to, get ready to leave, and this is it. I don't want nothing to do with anything. I'm ready to go. So when you have that situation appearing and you say, well, if this is the day, then so be it. He had to negotiate terms that was favorable for Suge to say, all right, you can leave. So when he say Dre still owes me money, now that don't make any sense. Because there's no way in hell Suge Knight would let Dr. Dre leave the company if he owed him money for something that happened while he was in the company. You are not finna negotiate to leave and then I'm gonna be okay with it and you owe me money. Then here in 2023, I'm gonna go on a collect call from prison and say Dr. Dre still owes me money. That doesn't make any sense. None whatsoever. Now, a lot of people have tons of questions and stuff that we're going to answer on the Patreon about this. A lot of it's going to be revealed over there, including the Snoop situation, Jewel situation. I might do it over here, but I'm going to do it over there first so that they would know the whole thing. And then, because, Patreon deserves it. And all y'all should be members of the Casino for Life Patreon anyway. So that's what it is. Now, when he left Death Row, it's like, are you serious? When he left Death Row, that was it. So they got Dr. Dre's royalty works for I forgot how many amount of albums. They got some royalty from Dr. Dre at Death Row. So all of that was going on. And when all of those issues was happening, Dre eventually got to the point where he realized, I want out. So when everybody said, Suge Knight, or whatever, and Dre was, lack of advanced business acumen or whatever that Dre had, and he didn't know what he was getting involved in, and he lost countless of millions in royalties associated with Suge Knight. So when he decided to leave the company and all that, he didn't reap the beneficial rewards of the first Chronic album based on all the terms of him coming from Ruthless Records, him getting away from Death Row Records. He basically gave up all of that success to start anew with Aftermath. So all his Death Row, California Love, all that stuff, they had a bankruptcy trial with Death Row. And in that was an oral agreement that the label said that they're entitled to 18% of retail sales when Dr. Dre decided to go directly to Interscope. He was forced to make some concessions, And one of those concessions is that he was, according to the oral agreement, he bought his freedom by disclaiming his ownership in both of Death Row Records and the sound recordings he had produced there. But the deal was left what they called unaffected by his royalties and limited Death Row from distributing the Chronic album again to, to the manners of being distributed, like, let's say, movie soundtracks and things of that nature at the time. So when Death Row ultimately folded, it ended up being sold for like $18 million. And the value of that was incredibly higher because the Chronic, with his abilities to be used on various platforms like video games, streaming platforms, movies, etc. Koch Entertainment, which Suge was talking about in the video, he was making a deal with the Koch and working with Koch. They did what they could to steal the company from him. And they claimed that Koch spent $280 million to acquire the catalog to Death Row Records, which Dre decided to recoup his several $1,000,000 after the fact. Once they recouped the company from Suge, right, Koch, that's when Dre decided, okay, now I can go get the money I believe that I was owed, and so did Snoop. So I don't see where Dre was rewarded anything from that. So the public, we get to listen to the Chronic album a lot, but at the said time, there was no way they could get it. They had E1 involved. There's a lot of people trying to snatch away Death Row Records from Suge, and he was right about that. There was a lot of illegal practices used. So Suge Knight was correct about that, but a lot of his details are jaded to make him look like the good guy in the situation, no matter what. And yeah, well, the situations are are what you would call delicate, you know. And when you do certain things, like let's say you decided that at one point I'm gonna make a change. I'm gonna start doing stuff this way. Well, at a set point, you should, start looking at it at a point where you want to grow, and grow towards, excelling your company to a new plateau or whatever it is that you're doing. Suge Knight was deciding to live in both worlds, business and street. And he kept trying to juggle the two worlds and mixing them. And when you keep playing in those games, they play by another rule. You know, all this gangster stuff is going to lead to lawsuits and lawyers and money going in the wrong direction. And they play the gangster game for real, where you getting stripped out. They own judges. They got people on the payroll that really could do you in, and you won't be a problem for them. So these realities came into play against Suge Knight and stripped away what he had earned. And, as a producer and executive, Suge was smart to a degree, but, he entrusted criminals around you and shady people. So when you bring shady people around you, that karma gonna blow back on you because they gonna say, I know more than you and I've been shady way before you. So yeah, I was doing shady stuff with you. Now I'm gonna bite you in the back. When things ain't looking like it's going your way, I gotta stay up. They ain't gonna go down with you. They gonna do what's best for them because that's what they was doing when they was with you. It was what was best for them. Now, Dr. Dre ain't no angel. I'm gonna tell you that right now. And he's ripped a lot of people off in deals and contracts. But I mean, look at Game contract with Aftermath. It was terrible. Um, Kendrick Lamar, he was with Top Dog in Aftermath, and you saw that win. These contracts, you don't know how bad they are until you start making a lot of money. Unfortunately, and because of the climate, a lot of these artists aren't gonna blow anymore. You know, and he was talking about Snoop ain't never mentioned in the top 10 rap artists of all time. He was like, where he at? You don't never see Snoop name mentioned up there. Ain't nobody besides Pac. So that's just how he moved about doing things. But yeah, we'll talk about the Jewel situation. I'm gonna do it on Patreon and we'll go deeper into it. I might come back here and do the do the Jewel one here too. But right now, this one with Dr. Dre, I'll do this public. But all the other ones, that's all finna be on the Patreon because that's finna go into a definitely darker place. The stuff that he was talking about that I know about and he know what was going on. And there's a lot of stuff he danced around because legal situations. So he was smart to do it that way. Even though the feds are listening, so there's a lot of stuff he couldn't really say involving a lot of the stuff with Harry O and some other things that transpired. But yeah, it was amazing. I liked part two almost better than one. So they doing their thing, man. They rolling. But yeah, I can give you some context to that. If I find out anything more, I'll probably put it on the Patreon about the actual where he says that Dre owe him money for the guns and all that. I don't know anything about that. So that's what I know. It's your boy Carcino saying thanks for tuning in. Don't forget my Cash App is Carcino, Karceno. Hit the like button, like, share, subscribe, the whole nine. Don't ever, 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 ever believe that, oh, you are not important. Your viewership is important. Everything you do is important. Make yourself matter. So, I'm going to get ready to get up out of here and do some more work for y'all. So, I'm out. Love, peace, and hair grease. What's up, Kwame Brown Bus Life? Ticket, HD. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for the support of the page. Y'all keep us going. And I'm out.